Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Eila Mell. Eila, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing very well. It is very exciting to have you here to do this. But before we talk about the reason that you are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are the author of Designing Broadway, as well as the upcoming book, The Tony Awards. You also wrote the official guide to the hit television series Project Runway, New York Fashion Week, and with Ty Hunter, Makeover from Within. So you've been featured in magazines like New York Times, Marie Claire, Glamour, CBS's The Insider. What made you want to become a writer and start doing that?
I started as an actor as a kid. So I did that for 10 years. I had an audition for a soap opera called As the World Turns. And I was up against this other actress for the part, and it went to her. And it was an unknown Parker Posey at the time. So that experience gave me the idea for my first book, which was about people's audition experiences and who was up for parts that went to other people. Like, Danny Thomas was considered for The Godfather, which seems crazy, but it actually happened. So that's what made me want to become a writer. And then once I did it, I loved it so much.
Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, you haven't stopped. It's something that you've continued to do your whole life. And not just that, it's not like you put all your eggs in that basket. You've been in the documentary Scatter My Ashes at Bergdorf's, and you are the co-host of the podcast Jiffy Pop Culture with comedian Frank Liotti. So what got you started in podcasting?
It's because I wanted to do something with Frank. He and I are lifelong friends. We've known each other since we're maybe 14 years old. And we've been talking about movies since we're that age.
Right.
So one day he was at my place and we just figured the conversation we were having should be a podcast. And we just started. We didn't really know what we were doing, but it's doing very well. So that's
if you guys haven't heard the podcast yet, those links are down in the description, as well as all of Eila's social media links. So make sure that you are following her on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. So we talked about Jiffy Pop Culture a little bit, but for the people that haven't heard you, I know you discuss movies, but do you do like deep dives, reviews? What do you guys do over at Jiffy Pop Culture?
Yeah, we do deep dives, and it's pretty irreverent and dirty. And we take good movies and bad movies, and a lot of horror movies too. So we will talk, through the whole movie. We don't play the movie, we just talk about it. Right. We go through the plot, but then, there's most of it is our commentary on the movie. And Frank is a stand-up, so it's very, very funny.
Right. And like I said, guys, I have those links down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the podcast and make sure you're following Eila on social media so you can stay up to date on all the things that she has, not just that she's done, but coming up in the future. Now, I know NDAs exist, so it's hard to talk about everything you're doing, but do you have anything coming up that you are able to talk about to tell people that you're going to be working on?
Well, I'd love to talk about the Tony Awards book. That's coming out. I'm working with the American Theater Wing, and they produce the Tony Awards. And so I've had the opportunity to interview pretty much every Tony winner that's still around. So it's pretty exciting. There's tons of legends in the book, and that comes out in April. So I'm very, very excited about that.
That is so awesome. Do you have any type of pre-order or pre-save available for that yet?
Not yet, but in August we will.
Okay. And just like that, guys, if you're following her on social media, you'll be able to follow along for when you can do this. Because obviously the Tony Awards is something that's huge. And for you to go and interview some of the biggest stars of the Tony Awards, that's amazing. I'm very happy for you. I'm very proud for you. Those are things that we dream about when we're children, and now I get to do this and I get to interview people like yourself. And this means the world to me because I grew up in a video store, and horror movies was my escape. My mom and dad owned a mom and pop video store, and that was what I did with my life. So now I get to spend my life now interviewing people about how it started for them. And I've never heard a better segue in my life. So we've talked about the things that you've done, but now I would like to go back to the past, Eila, and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Eila, the first horror movie that you watched was
The Shining.
What an iconic start to your horror life. I've said for a long time, The Shining is such an amazing story. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about the book. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Kubrick's film or even Stephen King's film adaptation that was direct to TV. The story that comes along with The Shining is amazing. So do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it, Eila?
Sixth grade. And my mother was reading the book. So I read the book before I saw the movie. So, because I wanted to do everything that she did. So since she was reading the book, that's what I had to do. And then I loved it. It was fantastic. I had never read a Stephen King book before. I was like 11 years old, probably. Sure. And so I made her take me to the movie when it came out. And oh my God, it was so exciting.
Right. So I got to ask, I mean, now that you've brought up the fact that you've read the book, are you more partial to the book or the film?
I liked the book more at the time because I really liked the hedge animals. Do you remember they talked about that? Well, I don't know if you read the book, but if you did, they talk about that
absolutely.
A lot. Right. So I wanted to see that in the movie, and that wasn't really a part of it.
Right. And see, it's funny because I don't know if you've seen it or not, but Stephen King did his own version of The Shining that was a made-for-TV film. It was like like sometimes they come back, and they do have the hedge animals in there, but they are very CGI. And I would like to see that redone today. But you're right. It's one of those things where I especially feel with The Shining and a lot of Stephen King's work in general, it's hard to say for me which one I like more because they are such different entities. Like, yes, they're both The Shining, but Kubrick's vision and King's vision are two completely different visions of the same story. And I think that you can go into each one blind and learn a lot that you didn't see or read in the other one. So I agree with you. If you're you've got a bullet to my head and you're like, you got to either watch the movie or read the book, I'm probably going to grab the book. I do enjoy the book very, very much. But Jack Nicholson is Jack Torrance to me. He is Jack. And when I read the book, that's whose face I see when I'm reading the book. So we know that you were a very young lady, sixth grade, and that you were with your mom the first time that you had seen it. But do you remember, Eila, which scene it was that affected you the most from The Shining?
Oh, well, of course it was the bathtub scene. Is there any other scene? I mean, that was really scary to me as a kid. And also those twins were so creepy. And I still think they're creepy.
Come play with us.
Yeah. Forever.
Yeah,
that. Of course. Those are the two iconic scenes, I think. And obviously they had a big effect on me as a kid. I was not prepared for that.
Well, and especially I think that there's two completely different reasons why the bathtub scene would affect you and I a little differently. As a little boy, I'm seeing the girl at first. I'm like, damn, okay. What's happening right now? This is awesome. Right. And then, the aging and you're like, whoa, hold on. Whoa. And, a young lady discovering your body. It's like, okay, what the fuck? That's what happens here? So I could totally see the two different and how scared Jack is. While, at first he's super excited and turned on, and then you get the absolute fear in his eyes of realizing what's happening at this moment now. So that's another thing about this movie is the interpretation of how you can take it, I think is super amazing.
Yeah. I know that Stephen King doesn't like the movie, but I think it's so much better than the TV movie that he did.
I'm with you. I don't know. When I see Jack Torrance chasing somebody with a croquet mallet, it just doesn't do the same for me as it does with Jack Nicholson and the axe.
I know.
I get where you're. Anybody that had seen, Kubrick's movie, I think, went into the Stephen King made-for-TV one expecting it to not live up to what Kubrick's vision was. And it's just like when people first watched the Kubrick film, I'm sure that there was no way it could have lived up to the original words of Stephen King. There's no way that he tried to do whatever he could to make changes and make it better, but he can't mess with greatness, man. I'll say that. Like, there's so many things in the book that it wouldn't have held up on the screen if Kubrick would have tried it, and he tried different avenues, and some worked, some didn't. So while we're talking about, scenes that were effective and favorites, I know which scenes affected you the most, but what would you say your favorite scene from The Shining is?
As a kid or now?
Let's go with as a kid first.
Okay, well, as a kid, probably the Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny.
I thought that was hilarious at the time, and also just the whole sequence of him really turning. And so I thought that was great as a kid. But now, I like the poster in Scatman Crothers' hotel room. I think that's funny. And I like the ash on the cigarette, like a mile long. So, just those
Yeah.
silly little things amuse me so much now. So, it's definitely, I watch it for a different reason now. I just think it's so much fun.
And it's funny because they do a lot of those like little action figure spoofs, and one of them was her cigarette, and it was like the ash was that long inside the
Right.
pack. I thought that was
I know.
hilarious. Like that's brilliant. And for everything she went through on set, for her to still put off the role that she did. She really sank into that role, and she was just phenomenal. I love her in that film. I think she did an amazing job, and she has that fearful mom wife role perfectly done in this movie. And when you have the scene of, I'm not gonna hurt you, I'm just gonna bash your fucking brains in,
Right.
like that's terrifying.
Yes.
Like it's a film that I think has stood the test of time. And while I'm talking about the fact that it stood the test of time, recently we got a sequel, Dr. Sleep. Did you see Dr. Sleep? And if so, what were your thoughts on that film?
I couldn't wait to see Dr. Sleep. And oh boy, I did not like it.
Really?
Yes, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't like the whole band of people that were sort of the main villains in the movie. And yeah, I thought it missed the boat for me, for sure. I didn't read Dr. Sleep.
Okay. Well, and I think that's the best thing about it is the fact that, art is subjective. And if everybody liked it or everyone disliked it, there'd be no reason for us to do things like this. And I think that what I love about Dr. Sleep is up until the third act, you don't even have to have watched The Shining to understand Dr. Sleep. It really did stand on its own. And it's really hard for a sequel to do that, to come out and not rely on things from the original film. And I thought Dr. Sleep did that really, really well. So that is one thing I can credit to Dr. Sleep. I'm a big Dr. Sleep fan. I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan. So, but like you said, to each their own. It landed for me. It may not have for you. So we talked about The Shining. No, go ahead.
I have to say that I loved Henry Thomas.
Yeah. He did a great job as the bartender Jack in that role.
It was like you were watching Jack Nicholson. It was crazy. What great casting. And I never would have thought of Henry Thomas as a Jack Nicholson stand-in.
See, and I'm sitting there like, that's the little boy from E.T.
Yeah.
And now he's playing one of the most iconic roles in horror history.
And
like
killing it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And even the face and the way that he talked, everything about him was so, because the way that I look at that, like he wasn't playing Jack Nicholson. He was playing Jack. Yeah. But they both just had that same exact vision of who Jack was. And it just, he nailed it. He really nailed that moment.
Yes, he made it his own, but he was also able to capture the spirit of the original performance.
Absolutely. So we talked about, some of the things that you've done in your personal life. We've talked about your first horror movie, which was The Shining. But now I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here for a second. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Eila? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
That's so easy. I love The Exorcist. I watch it every year.
And again, I get that a lot. And that's another movie that, I'm sorry for repeat viewers. That's another movie that I've talked about as A, one of the scariest movies ever made. And B, watching The Exorcist as a little boy compared to watching it as a father is two completely different viewing experiences of the film.
Yeah.
I often liken that to Pet Sematary. Watching Pet Sematary as a boy, I relate to Gage and, stuff like that. But now watching that as a dad, I relate to the dad in the film, Lewis. Same thing with The Exorcist. As a little boy, I'm like, she's possessed. Burn the house down. Who cares? She's done. As a dad, that's my little girl. What can I do to help her, to bring her back? So we do have a sequel to The Exorcist coming out in October. Is Ellen Bernstein's coming back? Is that something that you're excited about, or is that something you're gonna? Okay.
So, and just so you know, I got to interview Ellen Burstyn for the Tony Award book, so that was amazing for me.
Yes. That's amazing. Yeah. And like you said, this is a movie that I really feel like a lot of people that have seen this movie, and especially that have seen it at a younger age, it changed a lot of feelings about horror in general. As a little boy, this was the only movie my mom ever shut off. That's a story I've told a lot. It's the only movie that I can ever remember my mom being like, "Nope, too much," and just shutting the movie off. She's like, "This is too scary." And so it will always, I think, have that stigma around it for me.
Yeah.
Now I gotta ask, just because I'm a huge fan, have you seen The Exorcist Part 3?
No, I
It's
started to watch 2 and I couldn't get into it. So no, I haven't seen 3.
real quick. I think The Exorcist is the scariest movie I've probably ever seen. I think The Exorcist 2 is genuinely the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay.
And I think The Exorcist 3 is the best one in that franchise.
Oh, I'm
When
gonna
it,
watch it tonight.
yeah, when I shut that movie off, I hated The Exorcist 2 even more because I didn't watch The Exorcist 3 for so long because of The Exorcist 2. And The Exorcist 3 is really, it's like a supernatural slasher. It's got so many amazing moments in that movie. Brad Dourif, who does the voice of Chucky, has an amazing role in the film. He has an amazing monologue, and he's like, I watch it, I'm like, this guy's a fucking actor. Like, he's not just the voice of Chucky. Like, this guy is an actor, and he kills it in the movie. It's just, I can't recommend it enough. There's funny moments. It's got we did a top 10 jump scares. The Exorcist 3 had my number one. It has, in my opinion, the best jump scare I've ever seen in my entire life. So you got to go into that blind. Like, don't look up any spoilers on that, because I'm telling you, I audibly screamed the first time I see it. I was like, "God damn it, stop it!" And that's not me. I usually don't do that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
I've had an amazing time talking to you about some of the things that you're working on, some of the things you've done, The Shining, The Exorcist, The Exorcist 3. Please text me after you watch that, by the way. I would love to know what you think.
Okay.
But real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to bounce back to The Shining. And what we're going to do real quick is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking this movie on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. What we're going to do is rank The Shining 0 to 5 skulls on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Eila, what would your ranking of The Shining be?
I would say probably 4.5.
See, and that's a fair rating, because I always feel like, even if our first horror movie, I mean, you fell into an amazing movie for your first horror movie, but I feel like even if we watched a bad movie for our first horror movie, we still remember it. So it still has I remember my first horror movie. I don't remember my first action. I don't remember my first drama, my first comedy. I remember House 1986. Like, I remember that movie like it was yesterday. So that's why I'd love to do this and to learn how that started. So, guys, we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I want to remind you, I have the podcast links as well as all of Eila's social media links down in the description. So please make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're following her on social media so you can stay up to date on everything she has coming up, as well as you can be one of the first people to own her book, The Tony Awards, when that comes out, and read a lot of exclusive interviews with some of the biggest stars that have ever won Tony Awards. So make sure you're following her so you can be one of the first people to grab that on a pre-order. Eila, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.